The story begins with our main protagonist, called Baki, a mixed martial artist who exudes a powerful aura that causes weak-willed individuals to shiver at his mere presence. He recently fought in a bloody underground tournament where he emerged as the victor. Tokugawa, who hosted the tournament, arrives at Baki's school to warn him that dangerous men will soon arrive in Tokyo. Across the globe, 5 death row inmates escape, each leaving behind a message showing their intent to go to Tokyo so that they may finally taste defeat. In the United States, after a guy called Dorian survives being hanged for 10 minutes, he defeats his captors and impales them on a metal rod before escaping. In Scotland, we see a man called Doyle blindfolded and bound to an electric chair. However, he survives his execution and manages to break free of his restraints. He then kills all the men around him before boarding a plane to Japan. In Russia, Sikorsky climbs out of a missile silo nearly 100 meters high. The prison guards chase him to a nearby house, but they are too late. The World Wrestling Champion, Garland, has been brutally murdered. Also in the United States, Speck escapes from his acrylic cage and escapes from the underwater submarine by swimming nearly 200 feet to the surface, a feat possible thanks to his incredible lung capacity. In Japan, Yanagi, known as the Poisoner, escapes from a glass cage capable of withstanding a nuclear blast by using a vacuum palm technique, destroying the glass and killing the guards before leaving for Tokyo. With the 5 men heading for Tokyo, Tokugawa asks Baki if he realizes the significance of what is about to happen. Tokugawa explains to him that the 5 men are undoubtedly combat fighters and they are all coming for Baki. He describes it as an all-out war between skilled martial artists and ruthless killers, although Baki is rather skeptical about the whole idea. While training in a park, Rob Robinson, who is a kickboxer, is killed by Doyle. 3 delinquents contact several men to gang up on Baki. They lure Baki into a park and one by one they try to attack him. Despite Baki holding back, he easily defeats 2 of the assailants, who can immediately tell the difference in their abilities. Desperate, one of the delinquents pull out a gun intending on killing Baki, but a large man stands menacingly behind him. The Tokyo police has become aware of the 5 convicts escaping. They receive a report of a police car being smashed to pieces and an eyewitness identifies Speck as the culprit. Speck confronts Baki, who heard he was the strongest man in Tokyo. He has him shake his hand as a greeting before beating him into the ground. Police soon arrive at the scene and he allows himself to be arrested. Before he is taken away, he suddenly kicks Baki in the face and asks him not to disappoint. Baki's father, called Yujiro, feared as the strongest man alive, curiously watches a news broadcast regarding the arrival of the 5 escaped convicts. Meanwhile, Yanagi visits the house of his former rival Shibukawa and learns that he has recently lost. Shibukawa provokes a fight, but Yanagi suddenly attacks him first by throwing a pot of hot tea, naming this yet another defeat for the old man. The Tokyo police are cautious of Speck and the chief wants triple the normal security for his transfer. However, he meets Speck in the bathroom, who first offers him a Chinese bun before killing him and escaping again. In a dojo, Katsumi, the successor of the Shinshinkai Karate School, and Ritsu, a master of Chinese Kenpo, spar for Katsumi's students. The 2 appear evenly matched and Katsumi later says that he intends to incorporate Kenpo into his karate style. A few moments later, they're interrupted by the arrival of Dorian, who is seeking out Doppo, the father of Katsumi and former head of Shinshinkai. Dorian assaults Katsumi, who manages to defend against his initial blow, but is nearly choked to death by his own belt. He breaks free, but Katsumi throws a wooden board at his throat, causing him to bleed profusely. He remarks that if Katsumi is that good, then Doppo may provide him with a challenge. As Dorian tries to leave, Ritsu blocks his path and narrowly dodges a strand of hair thrown at him with the ferocity of a bullet. After an initial skirmish, Dorian acknowledges his skill. He drinks alcohol from a flask and literally spits fire at him before vanishing into thin air. Meanwhile, Baki takes a physical examination, but his strength parameters are so off the charts that his coach interprets it as him messing around and soon fails him at every category. Baki challenges his coach that if he can break the world record for the 1,500 meters dash, then he should be allowed to pass all categories. Baki starts out phenomenally, smashing the records for the 400 meters and 800 meters run in a matter of seconds, but he soon develops cramps and comes in last. Impressed with his progress, his coach passes him anyway. Tokugawa speaks with pro wrestler Igari about inviting his friend and judo master, Teitoka, to participate in the upcoming tournament, but Teitoka is brutally beaten by a sneak attack from Sikorsky. When Igari later tries to get revenge, he too is beaten to a pulp. One by one, the escaped convicts arrive at the underground arena, hosted by Tokugawa. Soon, Baki and other fighters contacted by Tokugawa arrive as well. A decisive bloodbath is about to begin. The 5 fighters that Tokugawa chose to go against the escaped convicts are Doppo, the head of Shinshinkai, Hanayama, a Yakuza boss, Shibukawa, a master of Jujutsu, Ritsu, the Chinese Kenpo master, and Baki himself. The rules are simple. There are no rules at any place, time, and whatever activity they may be doing. Anyone from either side may attack the other. Directly afterwards, Doppo and Dorian walk alongside each other, conversing about the latter's attack on the dojo. They run into Ritsu, still angry at Dorian, who wants to attack him now. However, Doppo beats him to the punch by kicking Dorian in the face, bringing the tall American to his knees. Dorian responds with a breath of fire, but Doppo clears it with a motion guard, earning the admiration of Ritsu. Suddenly, Doppo's left hand is cut cleanly from his arm, the work of a near-invisible metal wire used by Dorian. Although Doppo is mortally injured at first, he manages to stop the bleeding and strikes with the same injured arm. Meanwhile, Sikorsky is ambushed by Igari and his men eager to get revenge. They bring him to a nearby gym where they restrain him. Aware that Sikorsky is merely pretending to be captured, Igari fires a gun at him. Igari survives due to a bulletproof vest and proceeds to eliminate both of Igari's men. Now fully aware of the difference in power, Igari prostrates himself and begs for mercy, but Sikorsky calls him a coward for selfishly trying to protect himself instead of seeking revenge for Teitoka. He bludgeons him with a barbell before pelting him to death with a barrage of heavy weights. Meanwhile, Baki takes Kazue, the daughter of his landlady and a romantic interest, out on a date. They run into thugs who try to intimidate him, but they eventually back off after sensing his overwhelming aura. As they walk home at dusk, Spec is waiting in the shadows. Kazue asks Baki about the meaning of their kiss back during their previous tournament. He replies that it means she is the first girl whom he can trust, next to his mother. As he kisses her again, Spec suddenly appears behind them, but he is tackled away by Hanayama. After Spec sucker punches him, Hanayama strips down to a loincloth, revealing a terrifying tattoo on his back. It is tradition for the leaders of their Yakuza group to bear the tattoo of a fearless man who had once saved them in honor of his spirit. When Hanayama first receives the tattoo, he is unsatisfied. He attacks a rival Yakuza group to complete the tattoo, with scars running along his back. Meanwhile, Chiharu, the leader of a biker gang and a participant in the previous tournament, stops a street fight, admonishing the two men for fighting with knives and says that a true fight is with someone's fists. Spec shatters a bench on Hanayama, who resiliently takes it as though it were nothing. Spec discards the scraps and takes up a stance, remarking that his fists are far more deadly than any weapon. Right on cue, the Statue of Liberty, which he has been repeatedly punching, begins to crumble. As Marines and engineers hasten to secure the statue with cables, they wonder what kind of monster could have done such a thing. Spec unleashes his Apnea Rush, a technique where he performs a flurry of attacks non-stop for 5 minutes, leaving the opponent a bloody corpse. Unexpectedly, Hanayama manages to counter-attack, stunning Spec. As Hanayama begins to beat Spec to a pulp, asking him if he's had enough with every punch. Spec, who once touted his fists as being more dangerous than any weapon, resorts to placing bullets in Hanayama's mouth, which explode. Spec is stunned as even the bullets fail to kill Hanayama despite his cheeks being blown apart. Hanayama strikes him into a street lamp, electrocuting him. He brings him to the police, but Spec breaks free, with the only eyewitness of the event being Police Sergeant Katahira. Spec upturns the car Hanayama is in, and as he climbs out, Spec viciously assaults and shoots him. Spec remarks that this is a deathmatch they are in and nothing is off limits. He kicks his face into the ground, seemingly killing him. Spec fires another round into Hanayama's mouth, but he twists his head at the last second, causing it to fire into the hole in his cheek. Hanayama then goes on the offensive, mounting and pounding Spec to a pulp. The latter uses a stolen flashbang to stun the fearsome Yakuza boss, allowing him to perform a rear naked choke, supposedly impossible to escape from. However, this is Hanayama we're talking about, and the man is not human. Even in the police there are legends about his grip strength. He rips out a piece of Spec's arm, and before the American can process what just happened, Hanayama rips out a piece of his inner thigh. Writhing in pain, Spec desperately tries to stop him with a finger stab to the ear, but even that is insufficient to stop the juggernaut of a man. He crushes Spec in the throat, leaving him unconscious. When doctors begin treating Spec, they find that he has rapidly aged to over 90 years old, despite having the appearance of 50 when he entered Japan. One of the doctors speculate that it was a result of his dream finally being fulfilled. Meanwhile, Doyle crashes into Baki's classroom. After feigning weakness, Baki kicks him into the ceiling. Baki escapes from his classroom, not wanting to cause a disturbance nor reveal to his classmates his true ability. He hides behind a building where he narrowly dodges a sickle thrown by Yanagi the poisoner. Yanagi begins twirling 2 sickles at blinding speed, and Baki is barely able to keep up. Yanagi acknowledges his ability, and after getting into close range, Yanagi's attention is suddenly called by Shibukawa, who tosses a pot of water on him. Yanagi, expecting it to be scalding hot, is surprised to find it cold, Shibukawa's idea of a sick joke. Yanagi slices Shibukawa with a tiger's claw, a hidden Indian weapon. Shibukawa and Baki gang up on Yanagi 2-on-1 and they initially pummel him, a true tag team menace. After Yanagi escapes from Shibukawa's full Nelson, he leaps away and prepares his true stance, unnerving Baki. Yanagi asks him what the strongest poison in the world is, to which neither he nor Shibukawa have an answer. He then suddenly closes the distance, placing a palm over Baki's mouth, which causes him to collapse. Yanagi says that the strongest poison is oxygen. When humans breathe in air with less than 6%, they lose all bodily function. He explains that after strenuous training he has become capable of creating a small vacuum in his hands, allowing him to destroy nearly anything. Hearing the police approach, Yanagi leaves. As Baki finally regains consciousness, Shibukawa remarks that he lost, a fact which shocks Baki. Tokugawa laments that except for Hanayama, they all lost their initial brawls against the death row inmates. Baki gets up to leave, but Dorian enters the room, carrying a bucket of gasoline. Before he can do anything, Katsumi appears behind him, spilling the gasoline all over the American. Katsumi thanks him for showing him what a true fight is like, which has since changed his philosophy on fighting. He lights Dorian a light and discusses the future of Shinshinkai with Doppo, who says that weapons are needless in karate. Dorian recovers and prepares to fight back, but he is interrupted by the arrival of Kato, Katsumi's master. He uses a nylon fishing wire to slice Dorian's ear off. Katsumi remarks that the relentless desire to win at all costs, that should be the goal of Shinshinkai. Doppo decides to teach them a lesson. He attacks a downed Dorian, shocking everyone as striking a defeated opponent is dishonorable, even for Doppo. However, Dorian was not defeated, as he had secretly placed his signature metal wire around Katsumi and Kato, threatening to destroy them. Doppo slices apart the wire with his bare hands and humbles his Shinshinkai students. Train until your very hands become lethal blades, and you will never need a weapon. Dorian regurgitates a hand grenade, blows up the room, and escapes. He retreats into the city, where he slides down a manhole to his underground base, a facility he used during World War II. Kato follows Dorian, expecting him to be an easy target. But Dorian reveals he was merely masking his true abilities. He covers his hands in grease and broken glass, a trademark of gangsters during the Al Capone era. A cold sweat begins forming on Kato's temple, aware that he has bit off more than he can chew. Kato throws a barrel at Dorian, which is deflected. The difference in their abilities become apparent as Dorian easily overpowers and counters Kato at every turn, frustrating the Shinshinkai disciple. Kato grows desperate, declaring that to make use of anything and everything at his disposal that is his true karate. He smashes several bottles and uses it to attack Dorian, who stumbles at the sudden revival. Kato begins to unleash a flurry of blows, but Dorian suddenly claps, which catches him off guard, but thinks of it as nothing more than a bluff. He continues his flurry and emerges victorious, but it is revealed that it was all hypnosis triggered by Dorian's clap. Kato throws himself into a kamikaze attack, but it is useless. Dorian wraps his metal string around Kato's neck, and as the young Shinshinkai silently apologizes to Doppo, he is nearly killed. Ritsu finds Kato's unconscious body hidden inside a sandbag, which outrages the Shinshinkai school. After reciting Kato's injuries to his dojo, Katsumi puts out a notice to all Shinshinkai members across the country to target Dorian. While eating at a restaurant, Dorian soon learns that he is being watched and monitored by Shinshinkai members. He exits and gets into a taxi, where the driver points out that he, alongside several hundred other vehicles riding alongside them, are all Shinshinkai. They bring him to an amusement park as per their orders. Dorian challenges his driver to match using Shinshinkai rules and brutally defeats him, revealing that no matter their number, they could never have hoped to match him in battle. After making the difference in their levels clear, he turns and enters the amusement park. Dorian enters and meets a clown, introducing himself as the park's director. Dorian rides several of the rides until he is suddenly attacked by Pseudo, a Shinshinkai disciple who declares he doesn't care if he dies today. After an initial skirmish, Dorian runs to a roller coaster with Pseudo in hot pursuit. Dorian asks him if he meant what he said, that he did not care if he died. The two fight on a running roller coaster, and Dorian is initially incapable of fighting back. Remembering his training, he assumes a Sanchin stance, steadying himself despite being inside a moving vehicle. He manages to return fire, but Dorian tackles him out of the car, sending them both crashing into the ground. Pseudo is shocked at his adversary's recklessness and they slam into the pavement. However, only Dorian recovers, having broken his fall using his metal strings, and Pseudo slips into unconsciousness. Dorian turns to see Katsumi waiting for him, and Ritsu soon emerges from the shadows. When Katsumi swears that Dorian's presence is a scourge upon the world, Dorian turns to Ritsu and asks him if he feels the same way. Ritsu recalls his training at the Chinese Bailin Temple, and angry he was refused entry to partake in an exam to be granted the title of Kaiu, an acknowledgement of one's vast martial arts skill. His master brings him to a tunnel where he explains that a past Kaiju made using his bare fists. Ritsu is in awe but is even more so when he learns that the man was a Westerner, due to be executed. Ritsu goes forward and pays respects to Dorian, who he now recognizes as a fellow Kaiju, shocking Katsumi. Ritsu refuses to fight Dorian out of respect for their temple's rules. Katsumi goes forward instead but Doppo stops him, declaring that he still has to pay him back. He strips down to his trunks, the same he wore when he famously killed a Siberian tiger with his bare hands. Doppo goes on the offensive, striking Dorian at vital points. To everyone's surprise, he uses his left fist, which has miraculously healed, which Doppo owes to the power of medicine. For one agonizing night, a doctor worked to restore the use of his hand. Recognizing him as a karate master, Dorian volunteers to fight with his own Chinese Kenpo. The two engage in a high-level exchange, mesmerizing the observing Katsumi and Ritsu. Doppo strikes Dorian with a bodhisattva fist, causing the latter to regurgitate a bottle filled with acid. Meanwhile, Baki is out on another date with Kazue, and after expressing their love for each other, they kiss, earning them glances for passers-by. The two return home, but unbeknownst to them, Baki's father Yuichiro is watching. The duel between Dorian and Doppo heats up and the two appear evenly matched. When Dorian remarks that a master of karate could never beat him, Doppo takes it as a challenge. Dorian suddenly begins performing a martial arts dance, confusing Ritsu and Katsumi. Dorian throws a rock at Ritsu and another at Dorian as a test. While Ritsu swats away the rock, Dorian crushes it to fine powder. Doppo renews his assault against Dorian, beating him to a pulp, but it is all an illusion, set up by another one of Dorian's hypnosis techniques, and Ritsu is horrified. Dorian goes in for the kill, but to everyone's shock, Doppo manages to parry his blow and return fire. Ritsu attempts to undo the hypnosis, but nothing has changed. Doppo dominates Dorian, despite still being under the spell. Dorian is elated that the man he is fighting, hailed as the god of war in Japan, might be able to gift him the defeat he so desperately desires. Doppo overwhelms Dorian with an assault, his Seiken fist destroying his ribs and his kicks destroying his legs. Dorian begins to bleed out and has no answer to the onslaught. Doppo prepares his final blow, instilling fear into Dorian. However, it is not he who will deliver it, but Kato, who was brought out of the hospital despite his doctor's protests. Against all expectations, Kato miraculously gets up from his wheelchair, and as he prepares to deliver the final blow, Dorian is overcome by fear and surrenders. At the hospital, doctors find a strange implant inside Dorian's hand and suspect it to be some kind of explosive. Dorian, who was only feigning to be afraid, escapes from the hospital. Doppo arrives at his house. He finds it completely trashed and his wife is nowhere to be seen. He sees the metal wire on the ground and becomes enraged, realizing that this was Dorian's doing. Suddenly, Dorian emerges from a blind spot and triggers the explosive in his hand, destroying it in the process, but critically injuring Doppo. Baki and Kazue arrive close to their home. Both secretly want to continue their date in Baki's room, but neither of them work up the courage to say it. They kiss and Kazue goes home first. Dorian later encounters Ritsu on the street. Ritsu comments that Dorian has always been pursuing his defeat, and in his whole life, he has done nothing but win. Thus, Dorian has never truly won in his life. The logic drives Dorian into laughter, now realizing the tragedy of his life. He attacks Ritsu, but suffering from both physical and mental injuries, he is defeated. They transport him in an ambulance guarded by several police officers and Ritsu himself. The experience on Dorian reverts him to a childlike state, and Ritsu takes pity on him. Meanwhile, as Kazue awaits Baki's arrival, she notices a strange noise. Sikorsky pounces on her, threatening to kill her and her mother if she makes a sound. Kazue places her trust in Baki and screams, and he narrowly arrives in time to strike Sikorsky. Enraged that he crossed the line, he brutally headbutts him and throws him out of the house, intending to settle things quickly, but finds that he somehow managed to go back inside to kidnap Kazue. In a meeting to discuss the convict problem, presided over by Japan Chief of Police Sonoda, ex-KGB official Sakharov suggests to FBI Director Allen to make use of another convict, Oliva, to deal with the issue, but Allen refuses, citing that the man is far too dangerous. Sonoda travels to the Arizona State Prison to visit Oliva. He is stunned to see that an inmate lives in lavish conditions, complete with luxuries such as alcohol and cigars. Oliva explains that the United States uses him as a bounty hunter, with large inmates at the prison being personally captured by him. He receives a call regarding a job bounty and invites Sonoda along. When they leave on a helicopter in the courtyard, Sonoda is flabbergasted to see a giant mural of Oliva adorning the prison walls. They fly to an ongoing hostage situation, and as Oliva enters the building, he meets former NYPD officer Jeff, whom he brutally beat decades prior. Seeking revenge, Jeff fires off several shotgun rounds into Oliva, but the man is apparently bulletproof, and the slugs pop right out of him. He instead pulls out a katana and stabs him, but Oliva's heart is encased in a metal plate. Oliva becomes bored with Jeff and punches him out of the building, much to the shock of the surrounding officers. And this brings the anime to an end. Comment for part 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on another video. Until next time, take care.